Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review of first half of Season 5 of Vikings. In this video I will review the first 10 episodes of Season 5 of Vikings, so I have to give a spoiler warning for Vikings up to the end of episode 10 of Season 5. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. Also, a quick disclaimer that I will try my freaking damnedest to pronounce all these names correctly. However, some of these names are really hard to pronounce, and I'm not that really good at pronouncing the names. I will try my hardest though, so just bear that in mind. So anyway, talking about Season 5, the first half as a whole, I was really impressed with the season. I think this is one of the best half seasons of the show that I've ever seen. I think I'm most impressed by the fact that they did take the show in a different direction, that they changed it from just being focused on one character, Ragnar Rothbook, to more of an ensemble cast. I mean, it was kind of ensemble before, because you did have the Rollo or the Ekberg storylines going at the same time, but still, like this time, the focus before was always on Ragnar, even with the different storylines. Where here, the show isn't all about Ivar, it's not all about Bjorn, it's spread out amongst all of them. And I like that. I think that brings it in a new, fresh dynamic. Also, the show is doing things that it's never done before, like getting a full-on Viking Civil War where they have a bunch of characters that we're familiar with on both sides, which isn't really... I know they've done Civil Wars before, but not like this. This feels new and fresh. And also, having the Vikings be in England and have their own little corner in the English trying to fight them off and push them out. Again, this is something new and something we haven't seen before. And even stuff like Floki having an adventure and discovering an island, trying to set up a settlement there. We haven't gotten anything like that before. So I think it's amazing, like, as much as the season, like, you can look at the show and say, oh, it's repetitive, it's just Vikings fighting Vikings or whatever. But there's, like, a lot of nuance to it, a lot of, fresh and original aspects, the dynamics that make it so it's not repetitive, that it's not just repeating fighting. They have different aspects and different character dynamics and new characters that keep the show fresh. And frankly, I think it's working better this season than it has in a really long time, if maybe ever, because I think the people who are running the show, the writers and the editors, production value overall, it seems like they're fine-tuning their craft rather than just getting tired of it and repeating the same things. It seems like they have advanced, they have learned, they have improved. So this seems like a high level of quality. But it's not a perfect season. I still had some issues with it here and there. It was better paced than previous seasons, especially Season 3 and the first half of Season 4, which were very poorly paced as it had a lot of filler, where this season the writing was a lot more, the pacing was a lot better. It was a lot more concise, a lot more focused, I should say, than previous seasons. But again, I still had some issues with it here and there that I'll get through into with the storyline. Bjorn's Mediterranean adventures never really excite me, and I think Floki's thing it was okay, but there was parts of it that seemed kind of formulaic. And then the finale, the mid-season finale, I had a real issue with that as well, but I'll get to that later on. Anyway, let me get into more details. And first we'll start where the season starts in England, where you see the Vikings sort of fighting amongst themselves. Bjorn and, Finehair's brother, Halfdan or whatever, they go off to the Mediterranean, and Finehair himself, King Finehair, leaves because of his own motivations. So you get mainly Ivar squaring off against the English, which is interesting. I like how they showed Ivar as a genius tactician, that he was able to outsmart them. But on the other hand, and I've said this before, every time the Vikings square off against the English are portrayed as idiots that aren't very good at fighting, weakling, cowardly idiots that just sit there and get killed constantly by the Vikings. And I just wish there was a little bit dynamic to that. And I was thought that that would happen when they introduced Bishop Hyman at the end of last season, because he was portrayed as this huge badass. And sure enough, they did show him as a badass, but still, I thought he was going to invigorate sort of the English fighting side and actually have them make headway against the Vikings. But instead, they just have him get captured by the Vikings, but Ivar recognized that he's a badass, so he wants them to fight for the Vikings, so it takes them over to Norway to do fighting with the Vikings instead of actually making the English better. But that being said, I think they are going to do that with Alfred, and his storyline was really interesting this season, and it was very interesting how his mother sort of pushed him to be king after Aethelwulf died. Now, I was a bit sort of disappointed that they didn't do more with King Aethelwulf, because we are familiar with this character. We've seen him for many years, but as soon as he becomes the king, it's like he dies shortly after. And we didn't. I thought we'd actually spend more time with him as king, and maybe they would actually improve his character and actually show him do some smart things. And actually, you know, be a good king, but he was pretty much an idiot and just died. But they did show him that he had a kind heart and that his heart was in the right place. And I do really love that him and Judith actually learned to appreciate him. Like, she never loved him like she did Athelstan, but she learned to appreciate him, and she was actually has the father of her children, and she was actually really genuinely sad. You could tell that she wasn't just faking it. She was sad when he died. So I think that part of it was played out very well. And don't get me wrong though, I am really interested to see how Alfred fares as king, and I think the show did kind of want to just fast forward to that point, which is fair enough, because you know anything about history, Alfred was a real sort of badass fighting against the Vikings. So I think he's going to be what I thought Bishop Hedman was going to be. He's going to be the one that's going to turn things around and have it so the English aren't freaking just dying and acting like idiots all the time. So I can't wait for that. I think, and plus we got to see they've been playing up, since the last season, how smart Alfred's going to be, because, he had Eckberg sort of teaching him, and then you see him go to the, monastery where Athelstan was from, and then he realizes that the cardinals there are just up their own asses, like they're up themselves, and he was able to notice that. You can tell he's actually a smart guy, and that's how the show is portraying him, so I can't wait to see what they do with this character. Anyway, you get this falling out within the Viking camp. You get the falling out between Ubi and Ivar, and that was really interesting to see as well. I love the way they build up to this, because I love the scene, like, for example, when Ubi and Hefsek went to, and again, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing these names wrong, I'm trying my hardest. But anyway, they went to see their brother, but there was these bodyguards, and like, do you have an appointment? Pretty much. And he was just like, well, how about I cut off your fucking head? How's that for an appointment? So that was great. I love that scene. So it was just foreshadowing how Ivar was becoming notorious and building a lot of power, and people were actually following him. And we do kind of see why, because he was the genius behind his tactical, and we did see that Ubi wanted to make peace with the English, and we see how that turned out. We actually see that the English, especially you had Aethelwulf and Hyman, maybe it would be different with Alfred there, but with Aethelwulf and Hyman, they were sort of, oh, these are heathens, we can't bargain with them, let's just kill them all. So even though they should know that they were in a point of, they knew that they were in a point of weakness, they were still being assholes. And Ivar knew this. He knew this would be the reaction. So when Ubi and Hefsek come back, all beaten up and messed up, he just laughed at them because he knew that. And that's when I think all the other Vikings knew this as well, and they saw this, and that's why they followed him. Or most of them. Some people went with Ubi, but not very many. But it's interesting that Hefsek went with Ivar, and this is something this show and will emphasize for the rest of the season, because I think they were really smart about portraying this, because it could seem a bit off, because he has been shown to be closer to Ubi and Bjorn in particular than he was with Ivar. He was never really shown to be that close to Ivar, and they sort of do have conversations that touch on this, but I think it makes total sense that Ubi could see Like, he's smart, so he could see that Ivar knows what he's doing, where Ubi clearly did not, and kind of fucked things up. So to me, it makes perfect sense, and that Hetsvik would go with Ivar. So anyway, let me touch a bit about Bjorn's excellent adventure in the Mediterranean. And this is something, like, I'm never really that on board with. I know that from history, Bjorn Ironside is known most for his adventures in the Mediterranean, so I know the show has to portray that. But I don't think they do a very good job at making it interesting or making it add. It always seems kind of like a sidestep, like an aside that's not really that interesting. And like when they go to Sicily and they meet this king or whatever, and he hires them to be their bodyguards, and he takes them to this other king. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't fully get what was going on and why he decided to. Like, I know why he wanted to kill the other king, but I didn't get why he wanted to kill the Vikings. Plus, the fact that they mentioned, oh, there have been Vikings here already. I mean, again, they're probably being, like, historically accurate, but to me, like, for them to emphasize that, it kind of makes it seem like Bjorn's sort of less important, but I don't know. Anyway, I thought, I was a bit bored with that, and the whole thing where they got women for them to have sex with, and apparently they had a transgendered person for Halfdan to have sex with, and he did anyway. I mean, I don't really think those scenes actually added anything to the story. The whole thing felt like kind of the side. I guess the whole point, narratively speaking, not historically speaking, but narratively speaking, the whole purpose of those scenes were to make it so Halfdan and Bjorn bonded, which is why Halfdan sided with Bjorn in the battle. But I don't know. I don't really like what they did with Halfdan's storyline overall. It did seem kind of pointless how he did die at the end of the season. But anyway, getting ahead of myself. Now that I touched on Bjorn's excellent adventure, let me now focus on Floki's bogus journey. Now this is interesting because, again, I've watched some videos and read some things that said that the character Floki in Vikings might be based off of this famous historical figure Viking who discovered Iceland. And so I was kind of wondering if that would happen, and sure enough, we get that this season. Now, watching the show itself, you might not be aware that this island he's going to is Iceland, but that's basically what it is. And I actually looked up a bit about this after watching these episodes, and I actually didn't realize, because I don't know much about Iceland or anything, but I didn't realize that historically that the island was uninhabited at this point until the Vikings came and made a settlement there, and that for a while, I think centuries if I remember correctly, it was like one of the earliest sort of, or not earliest, but in that time period, one of the few like democratic societies that wasn't sort of monarchy or hierarchy or whatever. So that was really interesting, and it's interesting seeing the origins of that and how Floki has this vision. I did find, like, the first couple of scenes we got with them, where Floki alone on the island was kind of boring, and I was wondering where they were going with this. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he wasn't going to be based off this historical figure and they were just going to kill him off. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's interesting they took it in a new direction. But again, like, the stuff when he's wandering around the island alone, it's kind of like, can we get to the next scene already? But then, like, when he gets a whole bunch of followers from Kattegat and he takes them to this place, that was kind of interesting, and how it made sense that Lagertha was like, don't freaking steal my warriors when I'm about to be attacked. But I also totally bought that she eventually would let him go, because she does have a background with him. But it makes sense that she would be resistant fighting him for doing this, but ultimately she can bring herself to kill him. makes total sense. So they go over there and they start the settlement, and it's all well and good. And this is where the storyline gets kind of cliched to me, where they have this one guy who's being a total asshole for no reason. I mean, I think they do a good job explaining what his reason is. So I shouldn't say for no reason, but it's because he wants power. He doesn't like that Floki has the power, or the perceived power, so he wants to take it from him. But Floki's whole vision is that they won't be ruled by a single person, but these, this is their way. This is how they grew up, so this is the only way they know to live. So it's hard for Floki to try to create this new way for them to live. And it was interesting seeing that. But, I mean, that one character, he could come off as a really cliche and just a total, asshole just for the sake of being an asshole. So in other words, contrived for plot purposes rather than a believable character. But I did find it kind of interesting towards the end where, their sons, there's this other guy who, I'm sorry, I'm not going to learn their names, but, guy A and guy B. But the other guy who's actually friends with Floki and liked what Floki was doing, and his son and the asshole guy's son were, got in arguments, and one of them actually died. And so Floki was like, it's the asshole guy's son who died, and Floki's like, oh, please don't retaliate. This is going to lead to, we know it's going to leave, it's going to destroy my beautiful land. Please don't do it. And he does it, of course, because he's an asshole. And so Floki decides that, okay, the only way to make things right is we need a sacrifice. That sacrifice needs to be me. Now, I hope that this isn't, that doesn't actually happen, that Floki doesn't kill himself, because first and foremost, I mean, it's not because I don't want Floki to die, but I don't. He's a good character, but if they need to kill him off to make the story better, then so be it. Plus, he's the only interesting character there. I mean, all those other guys, kind of nameless guys, don't really care about. But anyway, the main reason why I don't want him to kill off, because I think it's dumb. I don't think it will, sacrificing himself will make that big of a difference. I mean, it's clearly this asshole guy's fault. I mean, Floki's saying, oh, because they retaliate, now the other family's going to retaliate, it's going to be a endless cycle of violence. Why not just kill the guy? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the show didn't make it very clear. Maybe he has other allies on the side, so if they did simply kill him, that they would all retaliate, and that's what Floki's concerned about. But it seems to me like he's just one power-hungry asshole that nobody likes. I mean, that's the way it came off. Maybe that's not what they were trying to portray, but that's what I got from it. So why not just kill him, and then it's over with? I mean, of course, they have his wife. You're not going to kill his whole family, but I mean, one of his sons is already dead. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's quite cruel, bloodthirsty. I mean, kill his whole family and then be done with it. But from a Viking standpoint, I mean, does seem like it would make the most sense rather than Floki killing himself, because I don't think that's going to accomplish anything. The guy's still going to be an asshole. I mean, Floki killing himself isn't going to change that. It was cool that Floki actually tried to placate him by offering him power, but of course, his revenge is stronger. And plus, I don't think he wants this, lawgiver, lawmaker position. He wants to be the one in charge. And that's his ultimate goal. So just kill him, for fuck's sake. But anyway, I am curious to see how they resolve this storyline. So don't get me wrong, I didn't think the whole storyline was a wash. It did have some flaws and wasn't the most interesting in the world, but I really liked it, and we'll see where it goes. Anyway, so let's get back to Kattegat finally. It was interesting seeing, fine hair show up there, and obviously he sees Lagertha still there, because it's obvious he thought that maybe because he sent his other dudes last season to kill her and overthrow Kattegat, but that failed, so he was hoping that he would find them there. And of course, Lagertha learned that it was Fine Hair who was behind it, so she knew it, and she imprisoned him. And this one pet peeve I have that kind of annoys me whenever I see a movie or show. When you have someone like that and they're in prison and they escape far too easily by his other people, and the main character, in this case Lagertha, should have just killed him. She would have saved herself so much heartache and difficulty. And plus, on top of that, he freaking kidnaps her lover Astrid and forces her to marry him. And that whole storyline was fucking brutal. And I don't even want to talk about that scene with her. You know what scene I'm talking about. I mean, I've always said that I've given the show some leeway because it portrays what this time period was like and how rough it is, but I don't know. That was kind of too much for me. And it was just heartbreaking more than anything that Astrid, just her whole storyline, that she's forced to marry and have this child with this guy. We don't even know if it's his child, by the way, but that she doesn't even like. And at the end of the season, she just wants to die, and because she doesn't want the child to be born, so she asks her lover, her real lover, to kill her. I mean, I know it's supposed to be tragedy, but sometimes tragedies are too tragic. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But it is interesting that when Ubi returns to Kattegat, that he forms an alliance with Lagertha. I don't know. This I find kind of hard to buy because it seems like he was... because he was right there with Ivar wanting to kill her for killing their mother, so all of a sudden he's willing to forgive her. But I suppose it's because he knows that Ivar is coming for him and that he needs fucking allies. So I think in that aspect it does make a lot of sense. I remember, like, from after season 4 ended, we saw the previews, they showed a lot of scenes with Ubi and Lagertha, you know, sort of being close and whatnot. And so a lot of people were theorizing, they're going to get a thing, they're going to fall in love. But no, it's nothing like that. They're just close allies, which makes a lot of sense. But the whole storyline with his wife and how she's constantly like bad-mouthing Lagertha, and then by the end of the season she like turns into a full-on psycho where like she just says this craziest shit to Bjorn's kids that she's supposed to be looking after. It's just nuts, and then she just goes crazy, and we actually think that she's killed them, and fucking Bjorn's wife is ready to kill her. But then, like, we find out she didn't really kill them. But still, it's like, I don't like this character. I don't like what they did to her. She was okay in season 4, but this season, how they turned her into this power-hungry mad woman. It reminds me a lot of Asalog, which is another character I totally did not like. In fact, when Ivar and... I was always talking about getting revenge for killing his mother. I'm sorry, Ivar, but your mother was a bitch. She deserved to die. Lagertha was so much cooler. But anyway, yeah, so I don't like this character either, and I hope they kill her off soon. But, yeah, look at me being all bloodthirsty. But anyway, let's now get into Captain Ivar's Civil War. We get the huge Civil War, and I haven't gotten a chance to read up on this and history and anything, but I don't ever recall reading anything like this, like Ragnar's sons going to war with each other. I know if I'm wrong, people are going to correct me in the comments, so have at it. But to me, it seems like this is an invention of the show, but I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they're taking... I know they had to take a lot of liberties, and I think people need to realize this a lot more, that this isn't a historical documentary. They need to take some fucking liberties because history is really spotty in a lot of places and doesn't have paint the full picture. But I don't know. This to me seems like an invention of the show, but whatever, that's fine. So we get the huge civil war between the Vikings. Now, I did really like this. I did think it was really high stakes, really high tension. As I said at the start of the video, I like how there's characters on either side that we identify with, that we like. I don't know, I want to say, you could say the more likely side you identify with is Lagertha's side, because you know Lagertha the most. She's been around the longest, and plus Bjorn, you know him a lot because he's been around for very long as well. So I think you're more likely to, and plus, like, they're the ones, like, they just want to live peacefully, whatever. They're the ones being challenged by fine hair. But I mean, I suppose if you look at it from the other perspective, as that Lagertha actually doesn't deserve to be queen, she just like bitch slapped and gave a cheap shot to Aslog and killed her so she could take over. So you could say that Ivar is justified for wanting revenge, but I don't know. So on the other hand, like the fine hair guy seemed like a total asshole. Like again, if you somewhat familiar with history, there was a king fine hair of Norway, so you kind of know that he is gonna win in some regard at the end. Sorry if I just spoiled it for you, but it's history anyway. So that's why I knew like that he wouldn't die. But anyway, it was interesting seeing that aspect of that. But even though, like, you know he's gonna win, it's the character, like, I can't stand him. He's a fucking asshole. Especially the way that he forced Esther to be his wife. And again, they're being true to this time period, to this culture, which is totally different than our own culture, which I like. But I still think he's an asshole. Ivar, I don't know, he's an asshole too, but I can't help but like him. He's an interesting character, even though I often disagree with his decisions. He's really bloodthirsty, really a villain if you think about it. And as I said, I mentioned before how pretty much all these characters are villain in some sort of state, but that's not how the show presents it, because it's presenting more realistic. There aren't just straight out bad guys or straight out villains. They're all villains and they're all bad guys, so, or they're all good guys and villains. It depends on how you look at it, and that's what makes this show so great. But still, Ivar can come off a bit too bloodthirsty, even more so than most characters, but I guess that's what makes him an interesting Viking. So again, I can't help but root for Ivar, because he is an interesting character, and I love the way this Hesfix, I'm sorry I pronounced his name wrong, all fucked up or whatever, this season's made him a lot more interesting. In fact, it's made a lot of these characters who, Ragnar's sons, who we just all of a sudden saw in the second half of season 4. So for the rest of the season 4, they were kind of just getting used to these guys. I think this season's done a good job of showing us who they are and differentiating them and making them stand out as their own individual characters. So that's really great. So anyway, we get the Civil War, and the first battle that we saw in episode 8 was amazing. I absolutely loved it. The way they portrayed it was really high stakes, high tension. But the second battle that we got in the finale, as I alluded to earlier, I did not like this. I did not like the way, the style that they did. It reminded me too much of bad episodes from Battlestar Galactica and The Walking Dead. Even though I do really love Battlestar Galactica and The Walking Dead was good at some point in time, but it reminded me of bad episodes from those shows that tried to be too artsy. Like, look at me, I am artsy. And I kind of get, what they were going for by doing it sort of non-linear and focusing on each character instead, and showing the sort of their motivation backstory. But it kind of came off as sort of pseudo-philosophizing as, why do they battle? Why do we battle? It's just a fucking Viking battle. I don't like movies like Thin Red Line that try to philosophize on war too much. It's just fucking war. You know, I like movies and shows that more like there's no rhyme or reason. It's just fucking people killing each other, and it should be avoided at all costs. This whole trying to like poeticize it and bullshit like that, I'm just not into that. And that's why I like the episode 8 battles better, because that was more of like an intense sort of battle. And again, it's not like there was no clear bad guys, no clear good guys, but it was just a battle. But it was still intense because you had now we did get 3 deaths in the finale, or maybe 4 if you say. You got Bjorn's son who died, who never really got to know that character very well, so I can't really care that much. I mean, you care because you identify with Bjorn and it affects him and his wife, and you know these characters somewhat, so you sort of care in that regard. And then you had I haven't touched about the whole storyline about Bjorn leaving his wife to go marry some other woman because he thought she was hot or whatever, and she was into S&M bullshit, which that seemed like another kind of waste of time, but whatever. But she died in a couple episodes later, so that doesn't matter anyway. So that was another death I didn't really care about, but I suppose it's just now, narratively speaking, it's going to force Bjorn to go back to his other wife, or we'll see if he does. So it leaves that open. And as I already touched on Astrid, it was, I don't know, it wasn't the right kind, because I love tragic storytelling, but this wasn't the right kind of tragic. This was the kind of, I just don't like this. Ugh, it's just too much for me, kind of tragic. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I look at that. And then, of course, the Fine Hair brothers kill, I didn't really like that, how he was basically, because they had the parallel of Hispic and, I'm totally not even trying to pronounce his name, but whatever, and Ubi, how they sort of met each other in battle, and Hispic just sort of stood there and sort of like daring Ubi to kill him, but he just couldn't do it. But then you had the same thing happen with the Fine-Haired brothers, but Harold was totally okay with just killing him, even though he was just standing there not even trying to defend himself. Again, that guy's a fucking asshole. Don't like him. But anyway, I think that's what the show wants you to think of him. So, I mean, I don't know, the way they did his whole storyline, like the dead brother I'm talking about now, and how he died, it's kind of like makes his whole character pointless. Like, I never really cared about him in the first place, so I don't really care about his death. I think they could have done Service's character better. He had sort of potential, but what they did with it's not very interesting to me. And ultimately, of course, they win the day. Ivar or whatever, they win the day in Bjorn, they have to evacuate. And again, I think this is pushing towards Fine Hair being king. I'm not sure how this is be rectified with Ivar wanting to be king, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Also, touch up a bit more on Bishop Hedman. This is, again, they took his character in a really weird place I didn't think they would. Okay, so first, he wants to fight for Ivar because he's stuck in Norway and he can't get back to England. So Ivar made a good case of like, I'm just asking you to kill heathens, and you don't even have to go against your faith. And so that made total sense that he would. But then he gets captured by Lagertha, so it kind of makes sense that he would pledge his services to her. But he pledged his life to her, and then they show them kissing. That seems really rushed and really out of nowhere. I don't know. I know he's a bit of a ladies' man in the first place, and maybe they'll reveal that he's just lying and he's not really pledging us. But how could he pledge his life? He wants to return to England and fight for his God and country and not be with all these heathens. It doesn't really make sense that he would be won over by her so completely from one conversation. But then again, as I said, maybe he's lying. But I don't know. The whole thing felt kind of, I don't know. Anyway, so my rating for first half of season 5 of Vikings out of 10, I was very close to giving this a 9 because I love there's a lot of things about this that I love. But I'm actually going to settle on an 8 because even though it was more tighter with less filler, it didn't pack some of the punch that the end of season 4 packed. And also, it did kind of slow down a bit with some storylines I wasn't a fan of, like the Bjorn's excellent adventure in the Mediterranean, and Floki's thing was okay, I guess, but it was really boring at times, and the whole Astrid thing, as I said, I just didn't like that. But as I said, I do overall love the show and the focus that they're doing, and I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of things I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see how where Bjorn and Lagertha go from now. Interested to see how Fine Hair and Ivar reconcile now that they've won together. Interested to see King Alfred in England kick some Viking ass. That's going to be interesting. And of course, like Ivar and some other main characters need to get back to England for that sort of action. So it's going to be cool to see how that plays out. And also, it's going to see how Floki deals with his sort of insurrection thing. So I think there's a lot of potential there for the show to improve, but overall, really great season. Really impressed. Anyway, that's it for my review of the first half of Season 5 of Vikings. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, I do many other videos or other shows like Star Trek, Game of Thrones, The Expanse, Black Mirror, Discovery, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.